Yuna had been on the ship for 3 months, and she still got lost. The eternal vigil was massive. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with corridors that all looked the same. Gray walls, cold lights, doors that opened only for certain people. Yuna was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life. The Galactic Coalition had sent her here to learn about the Velith, a species that few humans had ever met. The Velith were not friendly. They were not unfriendly either. They were simply cold. They stood over 2 meters tall, with thick scaled skin that shimmered like dark metal. Their eyes glowed faintly in dim light. They were warriors, every single one of them. Even their scientists carried weapons. Even their doctors moved like soldiers. Yuna found them fascinating. She also found them sad, though she could not explain why. On her first day, Captain Dowan had given her a simple warning. He was the human military liaison on the ship, and he had been here for 2 years. He knew the rules. "You can go anywhere on this ship," he had said. "Except the Royal Nursery Wing. Do not go there. Do not ask about it. Do not even look at the doors too long." Yuna had nodded. She was curious, of course, but she was not stupid. She followed the rules. Still, she heard things. The Velith did not gossip, but humans did. Other species did. And slowly, Yuna learned the truth. The Empress had died 6 months ago. She had been killed in a battle against an enemy fleet. She had fought bravely, as all Velith did. She had won the battle, but she had not survived her wounds. She had left behind 3 children. Cubs, the Velith called them. Kira was the eldest, maybe 7 years old in human terms. Bale was the middle child, around 5. And Nuri was the youngest, barely 3. They were alone now. Yuna did not understand this at first. Alone? They had an entire empire. They had guards and servants and doctors. How could they be alone? But then she learned about Velith culture, and her heart broke. The Velith did not touch their children. They believed that physical contact made warriors weak. A child who was held too much would grow soft. A child who was comforted would never learn to comfort itself. So, after the first few weeks of life, Velith cubs were placed in nurseries and raised by machines. Automated systems fed them. Medical drones checked their health. They were kept safe and clean and healthy, but no one held them. No one sang to them. No one told them stories or wiped their tears. This was tradition. This was strength. This was the Velith way. The 3 imperial cubs had not been touched by a living being in 6 months. Their mother had been the last one to hold them, and now she was gone. Yuna heard that the cubs had stopped eating properly. She heard that they sat in corners and did not play. She heard that the doctors were worried but did not know what to do. How could they? The cubs were not sick. They were not injured. They were just fading. She wanted to help. She wanted to march into that nursery and scoop them up and hold them until they felt safe again. But she was a human. She was a guest on this ship. She had no right to interfere with an alien culture, no matter how much it hurt to watch. So she said nothing. She did her work. She studied her samples and wrote her reports and tried not to think about 3 small children sitting alone in a cold room. 3 weeks passed. Then, one night, Yuna worked too late. She was tired. Her eyes burned. She packed up her things and started walking back to her quarters. The corridors were empty at this hour. Most Velith slept in cycles, and this was their rest period. She took a wrong turn. Then another. The ship was so big. The walls all looked the same. She walked for 10 minutes before she realized she had no idea where she was. There was a door ahead. Maybe someone inside could give her directions. She stepped toward it, and it opened. This should not have happened. Doors on this ship only open for authorized personnel. Yuna was not authorized for this area. Later, the engineers would discover a glitch in the system, a tiny error that lasted exactly 3 seconds. Just long enough for the door to open. Just long enough for Yuna to step through. The room was cold. Colder than the rest of the ship. The lights were dim and blue, casting strange shadows on the walls. There were no decorations. No toys, no color. Just smooth metal surfaces and medical equipment that blinked quietly in the corners, and in the far corner, three small figures huddled together. They looked up at her with huge eyes that glowed in the dim light. Their scales were dull, not shimmering like the adults. They were thin. Too thin. And they were shaking. Yuna's breath caught in her throat. She knew where she was. She knew she should turn around and leave immediately. She knew that alarms should be sounding, that guards should be coming, that she was in terrible trouble. But the smallest one, Nuri, it had to be Nuri, made a sound. A tiny, broken sound. Not a word. Not a cry. Just a small noise that meant please and help, and I am scared all at once. Yuna did not turn around. She did not leave. Instead, she took a slow step forward. Then another. She lowered herself to the cold floor, making herself small. Not threatening. Not scary. Just a warm presence in a cold room. The cubs watched her. They did not run. They did not call for help. They just watched with eyes that had forgotten what hope looked like, and Yuna made a decision that would change everything. Yuna sat very still on the cold floor. Her heart was beating fast. She could feel the metal through her thin uniform, stealing the warmth from her body. But she did not move. She did not want to scare them. The three cubs watched her from the corner. Kira, the eldest, had pushed herself in front of the other two. Her small body was tense, ready to fight or run. She was protecting her siblings, even though she was just a child herself. Even though she was terrified, Yuna felt tears prick her eyes. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. She thought about what she should do. The right thing was to leave. The smart thing was to stand up slowly, walk out, and pretend this never happened. She would report the door malfunction. She would go back to her quarters. She would follow the rules, but Nuri was still making that sound. That tiny, broken sound. And Yuna could not make herself move. She remembered her grandmother. Holmoni, she had called her. When Yuna was small and scared, Holmoni would hold her close and sing old songs. Gentle songs, songs that did not need words to be understood. Yuna had not thought about those songs in years. Now, sitting on a cold floor in an alien ship, surrounded by children who had never been held, she remembered. She started to hum. The sound was soft. It floated through the still air like something warm and alive. It was a simple melody, rising and falling like waves on a quiet shore. Yuna did not know if the cubs could even hear it. She did not know if they would understand, but Kira's body relaxed, just a little. Her scales shifted. Her glowing eyes grew less sharp. Yuna kept humming. Bale, the middle child, tilted his head. He had never heard anything like this before. The machines that raised him made sounds, beeps and clicks and mechanical voices. But nothing like this. Nothing that felt like something he could not name. Yuna opened her arms. Not reaching for them. Just opening. Just offering. It is okay, she whispered. Her voice was gentle. I will not hurt you. I promise. They did not understand her words. Human language was strange to them, but they understood her tone. They understood the softness in her eyes. They understood that she was not afraid of them, and she did not want them to be afraid of her. Kira took a step forward. Then another. She moved slowly like a wild animal approaching something new. Yuna stayed perfectly still. She kept humming, kept her arms open, kept breathing slow and calm. When Kira was close enough to touch, she stopped. She looked at Yuna for a long moment. Then, very slowly, she sat down beside her. Yuna felt warmth bloom in her chest. She did not grab the child. She did not pull her close. She simply let Kira lean against her side, let the small body rest against her warmth. Bale came next. He was less careful than his sister. He walked right up to Yuna and climbed into the space beside her, pushing against her other side. His scales were cool against her arm, but not unpleasant. She wrapped her arm around him gently, and he made a sound she had never heard before, a purr. It was deep and rumbling, coming from somewhere in his small chest. It was the sound of a Velith child feeling safe. Later, Yuna would learn that no one had heard a cub purr in over 100 years. The sound had been forgotten. But she did not know that now. She only knew that it sounded like happiness. Nuri was last. The smallest cub had stopped making that broken sound. She was watching her siblings with wide eyes. They were touching the strange creature. They were not being hurt. They were making the good sound, the sound that Nuri remembered from dreams she did not understand. She crawled forward. Her movements were clumsy. She was so young, so small. When she reached Yuna, she did not sit beside her. She climbed directly into her lap. Yuna's breath caught. Nuri weighed almost nothing. She was so light, so fragile. Her scales were soft, not yet hardened like the adults. And she was cold. So cold that, without thinking, Yuna pulled her closer. She tucked the tiny body under her chin, sharing her warmth. Humans ran hot compared to Velith. Yuna's body temperature was like a furnace to these children, who had only known cold metal and sterile air. Nuri pressed herself against Yuna's chest. She found the spot where Yuna's heart beat, and she stayed there, listening to the steady rhythm, thump, thump, thump. It was like music. It was like the humming, but deeper. It was the sound of life. All three cubs were purring now. The sound filled the room, echoing off the metal walls. It was beautiful. It was heartbreaking. It was three children discovering something that should have been given to them from the beginning. Yuna held them all. Kira under one arm, Bale under the other, Nuri against her heart. She kept humming, kept rocking slightly, kept doing all the things that humans did without thinking. The things that every mother knew. The things that her grandmother had done for her. The cub's scales began to change. The dull, grayish color slowly shifted to something richer, deeper. A healthy glow returned to their skin. Their bodies relaxed. Their breathing slowed. They were falling asleep. Yuna knew she should stay awake. She knew that guards could come at any moment. She knew that she was breaking 100 rules and probably a dozen laws. She knew that her career might be over, that she might be sent back to Earth in disgrace, but she was so tired. Her shift had been long. The floor was cold, but the cubs were warm against her now, heated by her body. Their purring was like a lullaby, deep and soothing. Her eyes grew heavy. Just a few minutes, she thought. I will just rest for a few minutes. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in 6 months, the Imperial cub slept peacefully, held by a human who did not know she was performing a miracle. The night passed slowly. The ship hummed around them. The medical drones beeped quietly, recording data that they did not understand. The cubs did not wake once. They did not have nightmares. They did not cry. They slept in the arms of a creature who came from a world where children were held every day and no one thought it was special. And far away. In the security center, an alert began to flash. Commander Torek did not sleep. He had not truly slept in 40 years. Warriors rested when they could, but they never lowered their guard. Especially not him. He was the commander of the elite Imperial Guard, 12 of the deadliest soldiers in the Velith Empire. His duty was to protect the royal bloodline. He had failed the Empress. She had died in battle, far from the ship, far from his protection. He would carry that failure forever. Now he protected her children. The cubs who sat alone in that cold room, fading day by day. He could not hold them. The law forbade it. He could not comfort them. Tradition forbade it. All he could do was stand outside their door and make sure no threat ever reached them. It was not enough. He knew it was not enough. But it was all he was allowed to do. When the security alert flashed on his screen at 0300 hours, his blood turned to ice. Unauthorized entry. Royal Nursery Wing. Human biosignature detected. Torek was on his feet in 1 second. His weapon was in his hand in 2. His voice thundered through the communication system, waking his guards from their rest cycles. Full tactical response. Royal Nursery. Now, the 12 elite warriors assembled in 90 seconds. They were the best of the best. Each one had killed more enemies than they could count. Each one had scars from battles that would have killed lesser soldiers. They moved like shadows, silent and deadly. Torek led them through the corridors. His mind raced with possibilities. An assassination attempt. A kidnapping. a political enemy making a move against the children of the dead empress. He would kill whoever had entered that room. He would tear them apart with his bare hands. They reached the door. Torek signaled for breach formation. His warriors spread out, weapons raised, ready to fire at anything that moved. The door slid open. Torek stepped through first. His eyes adjusted to the dim blue light. His weapon tracked across the room, searching for the threat, and then he saw it. The human female was on the floor. She was curled on her side, her back against the wall. Her eyes were closed. She was asleep, and the cubs were with her. Nuri was tucked under the human's chin, pressed against her chest. Kira was curled against her side, one small hand gripping the human's uniform. Bale was behind her, using her body as a shield against the cold metal floor. They were all asleep, and they were all purring. Torek's weapon lowered without his permission. His arm simply stopped working. Behind him, his warriors filed into the room. One by one, they stopped. One by one, their weapons fell to their sides. The formation broke apart. The tactical response became 12 soldiers standing in a ragged line, staring at something they did not understand. "Commander," one of them whispered. His name was Varn. He was 60 years old. He had fought in 30 major battles. He had never retreated. He had never surrendered. He had never cried. He was crying now. "They are purring," Varn said. His voice cracked. "The cubs are purring." Another guard made a sound. It was not a word. It was something deeper, something that came from a place Veleth were not supposed to have. A place that hurt. A place that remembered. Torek stood frozen. He could not look away from the scene before him. The human had done nothing threatening. She had no weapons. She was small, fragile, soft in ways that Veleth were not. And yet she had walked into this room and done what no Veleth could do. She had held them. Torek remembered being young. He remembered his grandmother, his father's mother, who had lived long enough to see ancient traditions and question them. She had broken the law once. Just once. When Torek was 4 years old and crying from a nightmare, she had picked him up and held him. It had lasted only a minute. She had put him down quickly, afraid of being seen. But that minute had stayed with him for 70 years. That 1 minute of warmth in a lifetime of cold. He had never told anyone. He had never spoken of it. But he had never forgotten how it felt to be held. Now he was watching 3 children experience the same thing. And they were not afraid. They were not weak. They were at peace. True peace, the kind that came from knowing you were safe. Knowing you were loved. The human stirred. Yuna's eyes opened slowly. She was confused at first. Where was she? Why was she on the floor? Then she felt the small bodies pressed against her. And she remembered everything. And then she saw the guards. 12 massive warriors surrounded her. Their scales gleamed in the blue light. Their eyes glowed like embers. They were armed with weapons that could destroy tanks. And they were all staring at her. Yuna's heart stopped. I can explain," she stammered. She tried to move, but the cubs held on to her. Nuri made a distressed sound and gripped tighter. "It was an accident. The door opened, and I did not mean to. She was going to die." She was certain of it. She had violated their most sacred space. She had touched their most precious children. They would kill her, but Torek did not raise his weapon. He did not give the order to fire instead. He did something that shocked everyone in the room. Including himself. He knelt, the commander of the elite Imperial Guard. The most respected warrior in the fleet lowered himself to one knee before a small human woman. His head bowed. His weapon clattered to the floor. "Forgive us," he said. His voice was rough, wrong, broken. "Forgive us for what we have done to them." Yuna stared at him. She did not understand. Behind Torek, 11 warriors knelt. Some of them were shaking. Some of them were weeping openly, tears streaming down scaled faces that had not known tears in decades. "You have given them what we could not," Torek continued. He looked up at her and his eyes were wet. "What we were not allowed to give. You have held them. You have shown them that they are not alone." Yuna looked down at the cubs. They were waking now, disturbed by the noise. Nuri blinked up at her with sleepy eyes. Kira yawned. Bale stretched against her side. They were not afraid. They saw the warriors surrounding them, and they were not afraid, because they were in her arms. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. I do not understand, Yuna whispered. I only held them. Anyone would have done the same. Torek shook his head slowly. No, not anyone. Only humans. Only your kind. He looked at the cubs and his expression broke completely. We forgot how, he said. We forgot that we could. The warriors did not arrest Yuna. They did not even ask her to leave. Instead, they stood guard around the nursery while she held the cubs, protecting her as if she were royalty herself. When the cubs finally woke fully, they did not want to let go. Nuri clung to Yuna's uniform. Kira pressed close to her side. Bale wrapped his arms around her leg and refused to move. They made small sounds of distress whenever she tried to stand. It is okay, Yuna said softly. She stroked Nuri's head gently, and the cub leaned into her touch like a flower turning toward the sun. I am not leaving. I promise. Commander Torek watched this. His eyes had dried, but his expression remained broken. He looked like a man who had discovered a terrible truth about himself. You must be hungry, he said finally. I will have food brought here. Yuna nodded. She was hungry. She was tired. Her back ached from sleeping on the cold floor, but none of that mattered. The cubs needed her, and she would not leave them. Over the next few hours, Torek told her everything. He told her about the traditions that had governed Veleth life for 1,000 years, how the ancient warlords had believed that affection created weakness, how they had decided that children must be raised without touch, without warmth, without love. This would make them strong, the warlords said. This would create perfect warriors. And it worked for a time, Torek said. He sat across from Yuna, his massive body slumped against the wall. He looked exhausted. We became the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We conquered systems. We built an empire. We were feared by all. He paused. His voice grew quieter. But something was wrong. We did not see it at first. It happened slowly, over generations. Our birth rates began to fall. Fewer and fewer cubs were born each year. And those that were born, he looked at Kira, Bale, and Nuri. They were different, quieter, sadder. They did not play. They did not laugh. They grew up and became soldiers, but they felt nothing. They were empty inside. Yuna held Nuri closer. The cub purred against her chest. Our scientists studied the problem for centuries, Torek continued. They could not find a cause. Our bodies were healthy. Our genes were strong. But something was missing. Something we could not measure or explain. Love, Yuna said quietly. The missing thing was love. Torek closed his eyes. Yes, but we did not know that word. We did not have that concept. We only knew duty and strength and honor. We did not know that a child needs to be held. We did not know that touch is not weakness, it is survival. He opened his eyes and looked at her. 20 years ago, a Veleth scientist made a discovery. She studied ancient records from before the warlords, from a time so old that it had been forgotten. In those records, she found something shocking. Veleth parents used to hold their children. They used to sing to them, play with them, touch them every day. And in that era, our population was 10 times larger. Our people were happy. They still produced great warriors, but they were whole warriors, complete. What happened to the scientist? Yuna asked. Torek's expression darkened. She was silenced. The Council of Elders declared her research dangerous. They said that changing our traditions would destroy our culture. They said that weakness was more dangerous than extinction. Yuna felt anger rise in her chest. They chose death over change? Yes, and our people continued to fade. Fewer cubs, fewer families, fewer futures. He looked at the 3 children pressed against Yuna's body. The Empress understood the truth. She tried to change things. She held her children even though it was forbidden. She sang to them. She loved them openly. His voice broke. They killed her for it. The battle where she died, it was not an accident. She was sent to the front lines by the council. They wanted her gone. She was too dangerous. Her ideas were spreading. Yuna stared at him in horror. They murdered their own empress? They called it sacrifice. They called it honor. They said she died fighting for the empire. Torik's hands curled into fists. But I knew the truth. I saw the orders. I could not stop them. The room was silent. Yuna looked at the cubs. They did not understand the words being spoken, but they seemed to sense the sadness in the air. Kira pressed closer to Yuna. Bale's purring grew louder, as if trying to comfort them all. The children have not been touched since she died, Torik said. The council forbade it. They said the cubs would be raised properly according to tradition. They said this would make them strong. It was killing them, Yuna said. Yes. Torik's voice was barely a whisper. The doctors told me yesterday the cubs would not survive another month. They were fading just like all our children fade. Their bodies were healthy, but their spirits were dying. There was nothing we could do. He looked at Yuna, and there was something in his eyes that she had never seen in a Velith before. Hope. And then you came. A human who got lost and walked through a door that should not have opened. A human who saw 3 frightened children and did not think. Did not analyze. Did not follow protocol. He almost smiled. You simply held them. Yuna shook her head. I did not do anything special. I did what any mother would do. What any person with a heart would do. That is what makes your species so terrifying, Torik said. And so wonderful. You do not understand how rare you are. The galaxy has 1,000 intelligent species. Most of them are like us. They have forgotten how to love. Or they never knew. They build empires and fight wars and conquer stars, but they cannot do what you did tonight. He stood slowly, his ancient joints creaking. You held our children, he said. And in doing so, you have shown us what we have lost. What we must find again. Yuna looked at the cubs. Nuri had fallen asleep again, her small body warm and peaceful. Kira was watching her with trusting eyes. Bale was purring so loudly that the floor vibrated. What will happen now? Yuna asked. Will the council punish me? Torik's expression hardened. The council will try, but they will have to go through me, and through every warrior in this room. He looked at his guards, who nodded in agreement. We have been silent for too long. We have followed traditions that are killing our children. No more, he knelt again, bringing himself to Yuna's level. Will you help us? He asked. Will you teach us what we have forgotten? Yuna looked at the children in her arms. She thought of her grandmother. She thought of lullabies and warm embraces and all the small, simple things that humans did without thinking. Yes, she said. I will help you. And in that cold room, surrounded by warriors who had finally remembered how to weep, a new future began to take shape. The news spread like fire through dry grass. It started on the eternal vigil, guards whispered to officers. Officers whispered to their families. Technicians sent messages to friends on other ships. Within a day, everyone in the fleet knew the story. A human had held the Imperial cubs. The cubs had purred. The cubs had slept peacefully for the first time in 6 months. Within a week, the story reached other fleets. Within a month, it had spread across the entire Velith Empire. The Council of Elders tried to stop it. They called it propaganda. They called it lies. They said the human had committed a crime and would be punished. But it was too late. The story was everywhere, and it carried something more powerful than any law or tradition. It carried hope. Yuna became something she never expected to be. Not a scientist anymore. Not a researcher. She became a teacher. At first, she did not know what to teach. Holding children was not a skill that humans studied. It was something they simply did, without thinking, without training. But the Velith did not know how. Their hands, so skilled at weapons and tools, trembled when they reached for their young. Their voices, so commanding in battle, failed when they tried to sing. So Yuna started with the basics. Sit on the floor, she told a group of Velith caretakers. They were gathered in a training room that had once been used for combat practice. Now it held cushions and soft mats and toys that Yuna had ordered from Earth. Make yourself small. Let them come to you. The caretakers obeyed. They sat awkwardly, their large bodies folding in strange ways. They looked uncomfortable. They looked terrified. A group of cubs was brought in. They were not the Imperial children. Those three had become Yuna's constant companions and refused to be separated from her. These were other cubs, children from different families, all showing the same signs of fading. Now hum, Yuna said. Any sound. Just let it come from your chest. The caretakers tried. The sounds they made were rough and uncertain. Some of them stopped almost immediately, embarrassed. But a few kept going, finding melodies they did not know they remembered. And slowly, carefully, the cubs approached. When the first cub crawled into a caretaker's lap, the Velith gasped. When the cub began to purr, the caretaker began to cry. It was happening all over the room. Cubs finding laps. Caretakers finding tears. The sound of purring filled the air like music. Yuna watched with tears in her own eyes. This was what they had lost. This was what they were finding again. The months that followed were not easy. The council fought against every change. They arrested some of Torik's warriors. They threatened to exile Yuna. They gave speeches about tradition and strength, and the dangers of weakness, but they could not stop what was happening. Parents across the empire began to hold their children. At first they did it in secret, behind closed doors, afraid of judgment. But then they saw other parents doing the same. They saw cubs growing healthier, happier, stronger in ways that had nothing to do with combat. They saw something they had never seen before, Velith children laughing. The birth rate began to climb. For the first time in 500 years, more cubs were being born than were dying. Scientists studied the change and found what they should have known all along. Touch released chemicals in the brain that promoted health, growth, and connection. Love was not weakness. Love was survival. 2 years after that night in the nursery, Yuna stood on the bridge of the eternal vigil. She was no longer a simple xenobiologist. She was the official ambassador of nurturing, a title that made her laugh every time she heard it. But the Velith took it seriously, and so she did too. Beside her stood Commander Torik. He was different now. His scales still gleamed. His eyes still glowed. But there was a softness around him, a warmth that had not been there before. He smiled more often. He laughed, sometimes a sound that startled everyone who heard it. In his arms, he held Nuri. The smallest cub had grown so much. Her scales shimmered with health. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. She clung to Torik's neck, purring so loudly that the bridge crew could hear her from across the room. Torik had become the cub's official guardian after the council was dissolved. He had not wanted the role at first. He was a warrior, not a parent. What did he know about raising children? But Yuna had taught him. And now, watching him hold Nuri with such gentle care, she knew he had learned well. You will be leaving tomorrow, Torik said. His voice was steady, but she could hear the sadness underneath. Returning to Earth. Yuna nodded. I have been away for 3 years. My family misses me. And there is still so much work to do with other species. So many cultures that have forgotten how to love their children. Torik was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You could stay. Yuna looked at him. Stay? The cubs ask for you every day? Kira is learning to write, and she wants to show you her letters. Bale has started to tell terrible jokes, but he thinks he is funny. Torik's voice grew softer. And Nuri still sings that song you taught her. The one your grandmother used to sing. Yuna felt her heart ache. She loved these children. She loved this ship. She loved watching a dying empire learn to live again. But she also knew that humans had a gift to share with the galaxy. Not technology. Not weapons. Not power. Something simpler. Something that humans did every day without even realizing how precious it was. I will come back, she said. I promise. But right now, there are other children who need someone to hold them. Other species who have forgotten what love feels like. Torek nodded slowly. He understood. That was another thing he had learned from humans, how to let go with love instead of holding on with fear. The galaxy is lucky to have your species, he said. You do not conquer with ships or armies. You conquer with kindness, and that is more powerful than anything we ever built. Una smiled. She reached out and stroked Nuri's head one last time. The cub purred and leaned into her touch. Take care of them, Una said. With my life, Torek replied. And with my heart. Una turned and walked toward the transport that would take her home. Behind her, she heard Nuri begin to sing that old Korean lullaby. Words she could not understand, but a melody she would never forget in the years that followed. The story of the human who held the cubs became legend. It was told on every Veleth world in every language to every child who was now held instead of left alone. It became a symbol of change, a reminder that strength and love were not opposites, and somewhere in the galaxy, a small human woman continued her work one embrace at a time, because that was what humans did. They held on. They reached out. They loved without asking why, and in doing so, they changed everything.